Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. We're going to have our October monthly Pokemon market walk. So we're going to go through all of the Sword and Shield era, the Scarlet and Violet era booster boxes, and into the Mega Evolutions era. So this won't be nearly as fun and exciting as the Magic market walk because frankly, we haven't seen any relief on prices of Pokemon products. The reprints still have not caught up with the market demand, and not enough buyers have been sufficiently discouraged from continuing to buy in this market at these crazy prices. So here we go, Sword and Shield base all the way back from 2020. Golly, $645 over the last year. Where have we gone? Up from 326, so doubled in the last year. Yes, scarce collectibles that people destroy for fun tend to go up in price over time. Rebel Clash SWSHO2, 505 for the cheapest box out there today. A year ago, 223, so more than doubled in the last year. Darkness Ablaze, $346 today, and a year ago, 153. So another one that has more than doubled in the last year. Vivid Voltage, rather unpopular, one of the worst performers. In fact, I think Battle Styles is now worth more than Vivid Voltage. Golly, the first time that's happened. $260. Where were we a year ago when you could still get them on Pokemon Center for MSRP? Well, the price was right around that MSRP, which was $144 for the Sword and Shield era. So, not quite doubled in the last year, only up about 66%. Moving on, Battle Styles, $280. Who else remembers the ordering this shipped to your house in the 80s back in 2022? And if we look back, $134 a year ago. Killing Rain, $508 once you add in that shipping cost. A year ago, 220. So another one that has more than doubled in the last year. Golly. 25.85 for Evolving Skies boxes today. I'm almost scared. It's probably close to a tripler in the last year. Yep, $765. So it has more than tripled in the last year. And when I did my long-term Pokemon booster box price performance update a couple of days ago, the compound annual growth rate of this product was still over 100%. So 25.85, and man, it's going to be a wild future for this one. The Moonbreon continues to impress. Fusion Strike, $934 once you add that shipping cost in. This is another one that's really performed well. Looks like the data is a little wonky, but if we believe what we're seeing here, then a year ago there was a transaction all the way at $200. So almost 5x in the last year. Let's check the 6 month just to get us. Okay, so yeah, so probably reasonable, even though this plot itself kind of messes up. I wish TCG Player could figure out whatever software bug was causing this and get rid of it. But $200 on the lowest transaction price from a year ago, nearly 5x, more like 4.5x in the last year. Brilliant Stars, $498 once you add that shipping in. And a year ago, 180. So another that has more than doubled in the last year. Can we keep it up? Can we get all but, what was it? Vivid Voltage was the only one that hadn't doubled. Astral Radiance, $450 a year ago, 170. Yeah. And Lost Origin, $740 with that shipping added in, 227 a year ago. And so we're looking at more than triple in the last year. And Silver Tempest, the final one that got so heavily reprinted late in its life, $445 today and 161 a year ago. So nearly tripled, almost tripled. So Vivid Voltage, the only one out of the entire Sword and Shield era that has not at least doubled in 2025, or rather, I'll say in the last 12 months. So moving on to the Scarlet and Violet era, we expect to see a little more muted performance out of these because a lot of these are still in print or maybe if they're not actively in print, maybe if they have surpassed their typical in print lifetime, they are at least subject to some of the random outlier reprintings that the Pokemon Company does from time to time. $240 for Scarlet and Violet base. A year ago, $100. And of course, being the oldest of the lot, that's not entirely surprising. We would be very shocked if we ever saw another reprint of this. $460 for Paldea Evolved SV02. A year ago, we were looking at 133. And so this is one that has tripled? Yeah, tripled in the last year. Obsidian Flames, $345. 119 a year ago. So more than doubled in the last year. Paradox Rift, $280 and 105 a year ago. So nearly tripled in the last year. It has been such an unbelievably hot year for Pokemon. We expect at some point this market will break. I've been saying it for months. I've been continually surprised that buyers will put up with these prices, will put up with higher and higher prices, with worse and worse behavior out of each other, and that the market has not broken yet. Eventually, it will. It may take a macroeconomic stimulus to do it, but eventually it will, and I would expect to see a lot of these older boxes trend sideways and maybe very slightly downwards over 6 to 12 months. Once it does happen, you would expect the newer boxes, like we'll get into here in a few minutes, to see bigger losses because the risk of reprints and then the realization of reprints will push those prices down harder. $294 for Temporal Forces SV05. A year ago, 115. So doubled, maybe two and a half is what we'll call it. And Twilight Masquerade, 333. A year ago, what were we at? 165. So just barely doubled in the last year. Stellar Crown, now we're going to be getting into some of these products that maybe aren't even a year old. $297 today. A year ago, 104. And you remember those days when we could get booster boxes for $100? 275 for Surging Sparks. Of course, this one looks like it's kind of come down off its peak. The market price has fallen by about $23 over the last several weeks. So I guess maybe it saw some reprinting, not nearly enough. A year ago, $120. Journey Together, $270 and does not have a year's worth of data. At the post-release low, it was 217, so it's up about 20% since then. And then we'll get into the very, very recent sets. Destin Rivals SV10, $357. Man, what did it bottom at? 245. See, this is the kind of wild stuff where I have been shocked that buyers are willing to pay these prices. And I know that this was the first product that got the half booster box, the official smaller booster box with 18 packs from Pokemon USA. Several other Scarlet and Violet era products have since then gotten reprints in that form factor. I do not think that will help the market. The market wants a certain amount of cards, it wants a certain amount of booster packs, and just parceling them out in smaller increments is not going to satisfy the market. It will just, on the very short term, make particular buyers a little less angry that day if a store was able to push out product to more buyers potentially. But most stores that get this stuff in stock should probably be parceling it out with a limit based on a number of booster packs per buyer per day if they want to not piss off their customers. But we are long beyond that point. $357. And now into Mega Evolutions, of course, Mega Evolutions base. $290. Just absolutely wild seeing these kind of prices. I think if you are buying these to put back in the closet for the long term at these prices, you're going to have several years below water at some point here. Probably. There's a tiny chance that you won't, but I still believe at some point the market will break and enough buyers will be pushed off into other hobbies. Enough of the short term flippers will be left with product they can't turn. People will start to capitulate, print runs will catch up, and we will see a lot of price relief. I am surprised at how long it's been. It hasn't happened, but I think eventually we will see it. And finally, Phantasmal Flames to be released November 14th. Of course, this is probably where a lot of the print capacity is focused right now. $330 on pre release. So, look, guys, like I've said a couple times during this video, it will break at some point. These prices are so unbelievably high. And, if you go and take a look at the R Pokemon TCG subreddit, you'd see the people just complaining about how expensive it is, how difficult it is to find anything to open, and how people who previously enjoyed collecting set binders of every release are just turned off by the cost of it right now. At some point, it will break. At some point, the reprints will necessarily overshoot the demand in the market. But when that happens, nobody knows just yet. Maybe if you were on the inside of Pokemon USA and you were seeing the distribution order numbers and you knew what your reprint contracts look like, you could make a little more informed guess. But outside of that, we're just at the mercy of the combined action of all the individual buyers and sellers in the market. I still think it will happen eventually. I know it will happen eventually. We just have no idea when. So, sorry, these Pokemon market walks right now, while the market is still just screaming insanely, are not that fun. But hey, that's what the market is right now. We went through several years of terrible bear market in Pokemon for 2022 and 23 and a lot of 24. And, it was more exciting back then because you could identify really great deals where you felt good going out and just putting a ton of boxes back in the closet. But the type of investor that I am, I see these kind of prices and I say the market's going to break at some point. I will just wait. And that's fine if I miss out on a couple of those midlife SV era boxes because I waited too long and the market outlasted me. I'm okay to miss out because in the TCG market, there is always more opportunity. There are always more releases. There are always new products, and there's always somewhere else to successfully allocate money if you feel like the downside risk is too great versus the upside potential on a particular bet according to your risk tolerance. So just keep all that in mind, guys. Let me know what you think. Thanks to everyone who makes this content possible, especially my very generous supporters on Patreon. Like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade.